Good morning. I'm getting ready to head out for my morning walk, and I always have so many aha moments on my morning walk. But I decided to record this before my walk because yesterday I didn't do a recording, and there's a lot of things that have been running through my mind that I thought I want to share before I have more aha moments. So, a couple of things have been standing out, especially in the past couple of days, because it's been um, a good past couple of days, but it was a really big week. So, one of the things that I noticed is that when my nervous system starts to go into shutdown or feel low, it's usually following a couple of things. One of the things that it follows is when I notice that my efforts, my bids for connection, my reach outs are met with indifference or dismissal or just a lack of acknowledgement, not disagreement, which I thought that's interesting. Because when somebody disagrees with you, there's an acknowledgement of it. And I realized that I do go into shutdown. So I was trying to figure out, why do I go into shutdown? So I reach out to somebody or something, I say somebody, I put out a request, I put out a comment, I put out a question, and crickets. And I'm not just talking on social media because that often happens, but I'm talking about just in life. Maybe it's I put it out in my to one of my friends, or I put it out in one of my communities, or even in my family chat, and there's silence. And what I noted is my nervous system does go up into sort of a peak of a maybe it's a defensiveness or an annoyance or irritation, like, come on, you're not even going to respond. Tends to go down the route depending on my relationship with the person, like, how much do I do for you and you're not even going to have the decency to respond. But it also then goes into a flat sort of sense of shutdown. And it's because the nervous system wants to be seen. It wants to be acknowledged. That's why I said sometimes it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not looking for agreement, but I'm looking for visibility. I'm looking for somebody to acknowledge. I see it, I'll get back to it. It's to me, it's basic communication. That's my value. My value is when somebody reaches out to me, I will put a response, even if it is a disagreement or I can't get back to it, or it's just an acknowledgement. And I notice that has me spinning. And so I want to be a bit more aware of that. What do I make it mean when somebody doesn't respond? And I know I make it mean they're not interested, they're rude, they're all those things. But I can change my story a little bit about that, and not change my story for the toxic positivity. But what I noticed is I changed my story in what my next move is going to be. Where is my investment going to be? Because I sort of look at it, if I am going, the analogy I was giving myself is, if I am going door to door and I knock on people's doors, and consistently some people don't answer their doors, I'm not going to keep knocking on that door. But if I go to somebody's door and I knock and they answer it, even if they answer it and they say, oh, I can't talk right now, they answer it, they acknowledge it, I'm going to keep going to that door. So maybe I don't have to make it mean that people aren't answering their doors because they don't like me or they don't want me, but I do notice that I am teaching my nervous system which doors are safe doors to knock on. So that is one thing, just observing how when I put effort in and it's not acknowledged, I'm not saying appreciated, I'm not even asking for gratitude, but when I put effort in and it's not acknowledged, when my nervous system is dismissed or it's indifferent, that impacts me. So that's an observation, and something that I want to think about. Where do I put my efforts? Where are my efforts best spent? Sort of like investments. I'm not going to invest in something that always gives me a negative return. I'm going to be searching. My nervous system is searching for investments where I get some type of return. So that's the first thing. The second thing that has really come up for me is, like I've shared, we've had a lot going on this week in the family, and I probably will share more about that coming up. But things have gone relatively well. And I thought it was interesting. Things have gone relatively well. And yesterday we were visiting one of my kids who had just moved to a new location. We had a great day. It was so fun exploring their new neighborhood, and we had great conversations and lots of laughs. And my husband and I returned home last night, and we went for a walk. And as I was sharing with him, I'm like, everything's good. We had a great family reunion. The family issue that we were dealing with, everything went as well as could be expected. Had a great time with our kids. And last night I felt this wash of sadness and emotion and grief. And when we talked about it, it's because sometimes you're holding so tightly because you're trying to stay in survival mode. You're holding so tightly that you don't give yourself room to feel all the emotions. And that was the conversation. I said, it's almost like, do you know when you sometimes are working, and then you go on vacation and you get sick? That's always happens to me. Or working, and I used to then stop for like Christmas holidays for 2 weeks off. I'm like, oh, it's amazing. And like the next day I get sick. And I'm like, why do I get sick when I have time off? It's because my nervous system and my body has a chance to breathe and to settle. And so I felt like that last night when we were going for our walk. I said to my husband, I feel this overwhelming urge. We were talking about how things had gone well, and we were talking about how we still have some apprehension about future, and how there's an adaptation and adjustment for us to be making, and everything's going well. And I felt this massive wave of emotion. And I was walking and I started crying as I was walking, and I can feel emotional now. Because it is that you are still feeling all the feels, because there's all the what ifs, there's uncertainty, there's unknowns, there's been keeping it all together, and then having some space to breathe and to reflect and to look at everything that you've been through. And then for me, it's also making links to past experiences. Sometimes I'll be faced with a challenge, and this is part of how my nervous system has always responded, being somebody who's often on team hyper. I'm faced with a challenge. I don't give myself much of a beat to sort of digest what's going on. I'm like, right, how do we deal with this? What's our next move? How do we fix it? And that is my coping strategy. And then when things are sort of settled, that's when my emotions start kicking in. And normally what I've done is I'm like, right, that's silly, everything's good. Why? Rationalizing away those emotions. Like, it doesn't make sense why you're feeling sad. You should be grateful, you should be happy, you should appreciate. And what I'm allowing myself to do now is just allowing it to be there. So last night I allowed myself to cry, and I allowed myself to just, share with Rob, I feel crappy. I know it seems silly. And we talked about some of the reasons. We talked about why he's feeling crappy too. And we talked about it's sort of a behind the scenes crappy, because sometimes when things go well, everybody's like, oh, it's such a relief. And it is a relief on many levels. But my body hasn't caught up to that relief yet. My nervous system is still living with some fear and some uncertainty and sadness, and it's picking up on imprints from the past experiences that I've had that had different endings, had different stories. And there's grief. And grief shows up in our lives whether we give it permission to or not. And I sort of think Rob, sometimes he has a word he calls things, or he calls me sometimes when I'm being sneaky in a cute way. He says, oh, you're being a sneakster. And we sort of laugh because it's such a funny word. But grief is a sneakster. It sneaks up on you. And sometimes you can clearly see the path that it took and how you arrived there. And other times it just sneaks up on you. And my brain tries to rationalize it away and justify and even shame grief for being there. Why are you grieving? Why are you feeling sad? Everything's going well, or you have this or this or this. You should appreciate all these things. And I'm just letting grief be here. I'm just letting, without trying to figure out why it's here and does it make logical sense to be there and is it justified to be there. It's there. I feel it. I felt it when I woke up this morning. I felt it when I went to bed last night. I feel it on and off. It doesn't mean that anything's wrong. It doesn't mean that I have to fix it. As I'm sharing this with you, I'm partially trying to tell myself that I don't need to fix it. I don't need to make it go away. I don't need to justify it. I don't need to explain it. I just need to allow it to be there. So those are some thoughts. I'm going to go for my walk now. We'll see what else comes up. See you later.